I am 58 years old. I thought the white lilies my son brought were a belated apology. 2 days later, I saw my signature on the sales contract for my home, a contract I never signed. When did the son I raised learn to borrow his mother's hand to sign away her roof, I decided if someone was forging me, I would play the part of myself perfectly to expose everything. My name is Evelyn Barlow. I am 58 years old, a widow living in the quiet suburbs of a Midwest city that feels smaller every year. My life is orderly. I keep busy with a part-time administrator job at the North Star Community Clinic, helping people navigate forms and find comfort in the sterile hallways. It is good. Quiet work. My home is a 3-bedroom bungalow, the kind with siding that is supposed to look like wood and a front porch just big enough for 2 chairs and a pot of struggling lavender. Inside, it is still Tom's house. His reading glasses are on the nightstand. His favorite coffee mug, chipped at the rim, sits at the back of my cupboard. Every room holds an echo of him, a comforting weight I have built my life around. My son, Dylan, is 32. He married Sloane Pierce a few years ago, and they moved into one of those new developments on the other side of town, the ones with no trees. Our relationship has become thin. The calls are infrequent, and they almost always have a purpose. The conversations start with a brief, dutiful, "How are you, Mum?" before gliding into the real reason, a quick favor, an urgent need. I have tried to build boundaries. I have practiced saying no in front of the bathroom mirror. But my resolve melts at the sound of his voice, that familiar timbre now laced with a manufactured urgency. "Mum, just this once," he will say, and the dam breaks. I give in. Every time. So when he called last Tuesday, saying he wanted to stop by, I was surprised. When he showed up on my doorstep, holding a large bouquet of white lilies and a lemon cake, I was floored. "These are for you, Mom," he said, avoiding my eyes as he pushed the flowers into my arms. The cellophane crinkled loudly in the quiet afternoon. "And I made this." He held up the bakery box. I knew from the gold foil sticker it was from the sweetest thing downtown, but I said nothing. I wanted to make things right," he mumbled, stepping inside. He seemed nervous, restless. He did not settle on the sofa as he usually would. He paced. He walked into the dining room, his phone in his hand. "What are you doing, honey?" I asked, placing the heavy vase on the coffee table. "Oh, just..." Sloane and I were talking about paint colors. "Our living room is so bland. Yours is nice," he said, snapping a photo of the wall over the fireplace. "Just getting some ideas to send her." He moved toward the hallway, taking another picture. "She wants to see the layout, how the light hits." His explanations felt flimsy, unpracticed. I was confused, a little hurt by his distraction, but his next words smoothed over the cracks. "It is really good to see you, Mom." He finally turned to me, his phone now in his pocket, and pulled me into a hug. It was a real hug, strong and warm, the kind he used to give when he was a boy. It felt like coming home. My own tension dissolved. "I will be back on Sunday," he promised, pulling away. "For real this time. I will clear out that garage for you. It is a fire hazard. Mum?" He smiled, kissed my cheek, and was gone. I stood at the door, my hand on my heart, feeling a warmth I had not realized I was missing. I felt happy. I turned back to the living room, ready to find a slice of that store-bought cake. As I picked up the vase to adjust its position, The thick satin ribbon that bound the lilies slipped from the wet cellophane and fell to the floor. I picked it up. It was navy blue, with elegant silver script, Blue Acre Realty. I traced the unfamiliar logo with my thumb, assuming it was just the florist the bakery used. I did not give it a second thought. I tossed the ribbon onto the junk mail pile. It was only later, when I was throwing out the bouquet's wrapping, that I saw the small greeting card. It was not a thinking of you card. It was heavy, embossed cardstock. It read, "To New Beginnings." I opened it. The inside was blank, but the smell that rose from the card was not perfume. It was the sharp, metallic tang of fresh ink. I ran my thumb over the blank paper, and a cold shiver, sudden and unwelcome, ran straight up my spine. The happiness from Dylan's visit lasted exactly 2 days. It evaporated on Thursday morning over a cooling cup of coffee. My laptop screen flashed with an automated email from my bank, the one I had used for 30 years. The subject line was "Urgent action required for your mortgage account." I almost deleted it as spam. Mortgage account. Tom and I had burned the mortgage papers at a small backyard barbecue back in 2011. That final payment was one of the proudest days of our lives. I clicked it. The message was dense with corporate language, but the key phrases jumped out: pending transfer of your mortgage file and request for identity verification to proceed with closing. My heart did a strange, cold flip. This was a mistake. A very stupid, clerical error. I dialed the bank's main number, tapping my fingers on the kitchen counter while the hold music played. "Midwest Mutual? This is Brenda. How can I help you?" I explained the situation calmly. I was Evelyn Barlow. I owned my home outright, and I had received a bizarre notification about a mortgage transfer. Brenda's typing clicked in the background. "Ma'am, I am showing an active file here. It looks like we're processing the paperwork for the sale of your property. We're just waiting on the final title clearance." The room tilted. "Sale, I am not selling my home." "Oh," Brenda said, her professional tone wavering. "Well, according to the documents we received from Harbour and Bell Title, the closing is scheduled for tomorrow, Friday." Harbour and Bell. Title. I had never heard of them. "Brenda, there is no sale. There is no closing. You need to stop this immediately." "Ma'am, I can't stop a closing. You would need to contact the title company. The contract is signed. It's in your name. Evelyn Barlow." I hung up, my hand shaking. I went back to my laptop and searched my inbox for Harbour and Bell. An email had arrived yesterday, buried in my promotions tab. I opened it. "Dear Ms. Barlow, please find attached the final sale contract and closing schedule for your property. We look forward to seeing you this Friday." I clicked the attachment. It was my house, my address, my name, typed neatly. And at the bottom, on the seller's line, was my signature. I stopped breathing. It was not a forgery. It was my signature. It was perfect. It was the way I always signed, the way my wrist automatically moves. The slight, backward loop on the E, the sharp peak of the B. And there, at the end, the damning, irrefutable proof, the distinctive, long drag of the tail on my Y, a habit I picked up in high school, a flourish I used on every check, every card, every legal document of my life. I had not signed this. I had never seen this paper. But my hand was all over it. My eyes scanned the details, trying to make sense of the words. The buyer, Piermont Family Holdings, LLC. A name that meant nothing. The terms "sold as is" and a line that made my stomach clench. Seller acknowledges receipt of a 10% cash deposit. 10%. Cash. I had received nothing. I stumbled back from the table, my mind racing, trying to connect dots that were invisible. The flowers, the cake, the strange photos. To new beginnings. I went to the front door and opened the app for my doorbell camera. I scrolled back 2 days to Dylan's visit. There he was, holding the flowers. But then, for a long stretch, maybe 3 full minutes, the screen was just black. A close-up of his jacket. He had stood directly in front of the lens, his body completely obscuring the porch and my front door. Standing, talking, blocking the view. "Just getting ideas for paint," he had said. I pulled out my phone and called him. The line rang once, twice, and clicked straight to his voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Dylan." I hung up and tried again. Straight to voicemail. My thumbs were numb as I typed a text. "Dylan, the bank says my house is being sold. Call me immediately." A minute later, 3 dots appeared. They vanished. They appeared again. Then, a message flashed on my screen. "Mom, don't worry. I know it looks weird. Just let me handle it." Handle it. A cold, unfamiliar fear settled in my chest. This was my home. This was Tom's home. And for the first time since he died, I felt utterly, terrifyingly unsafe inside it. That night, I did something I had not done since Dylan was a teenager. I locked the deadbolt. I engaged the chain lock. I walked to the back door and slid the extra security bar across the frame. Then I went to the closet in my bedroom, moved aside the box of old tax returns, and opened the small floor safe. I pulled out the original, crisp deed to my house. The paper was heavy in my hand. It was the only proof I had that this house was mine, and I held it to my chest, as if it were a shield. I sat in Tom's armchair, the real deed resting on my lap. The house was silent, but my head was screaming with memories, each one a flashbulb illuminating a piece of the puzzle. Dylan. My Dylan. He had not always been like this. After Tom died, he was adrift. I was pulling myself from the wreckage of grief, and he was sinking into a different kind. Credit card debt. Thousands of it. He had come to me, ashamed, holding statements that looked like phone numbers. I used what was left of the insurance money to pull him out, believing I was giving him a fresh start. Sloane was there, too, observing. I remember her sitting at this very kitchen table, watching me write the check. "It's a lot to put into a black hole. Evelyn," she had said, stirring her tea. She always found my house quaint, a word that sounded like an insult. All this space, just for one person. The upkeep must be dreadful. Her words came back to me now, sharp and clear. I remembered a backyard barbecue, maybe a year ago. Sloane, holding a glass of white wine, had laughed a high, thin sound and waved her glass at the porch. "This whole place is basically our future," she'd said to her friends, loud enough for me to hear. "We're just waiting for the market to peak." At the time, I'd felt a cold sickness in my stomach. I told myself it was just Sloane's terrible sense of humor. I told myself she was joking. But Dylan, how the signature, it was too good. Then I remembered. It was about 6 months ago. Dylan stopped by on a weekday, looking flustered. "Mum, I missed a delivery, a new laptop. They won't release it, and I'll be at work. Can you just sign this?" He'd held out a clipboard. On it was a simple, temporary authorization for pickup form for the post office. It just lets me grab your mail for the next month if anything important comes. It seemed so reasonable. I took his pen. I remember the clipboard felt thick, layered. I signed Evelyn Barlow on the line he pointed to. I did not look underneath the single form. I did not see the other papers. The other sample signatures he must have had layered there. Practicing. Collecting. I looked at the deed in my hand, at the signature I made in 1992. I looked at the digital copy of the fraudulent contract on my laptop. I have a habit, a flaw in my cursive. My hand slants slightly to the left, and when I write the W in Barlow, I pause. My pen rests for a fraction of a second in the middle valley of the letter, leaving a tiny, darker pool of ink. The forgery had it. This was not a guess. This was not a stranger. This was someone who had watched me sign Christmas cards, who had studied the authorization form on that clipboard. The other pieces fell into place, sharp and painful. His questions over the last few months. Mum, what are you paying in property taxes? Just curious. Sloane was looking at comps in your neighborhood. Prices are crazy. And that time, 3 weeks ago, when he asked to see my utility bill. I'm trying to fight our electric company. Need to see what your rates are. He took out his phone and snapped a picture of it. My name, my address, my account numbers. I looked at the vase on the coffee table. The white lilies were already starting to brown at the edges, their scent thick and funereal. My mother. Those were the flowers at my mother's funeral. The entire church in that small Illinois town had been suffocating in the scent of white lilies. Dylan had been there. He was 12. He knew. He had to know what those flowers meant. The navy blue ribbon from Blue Acre Realty was still on the counter. Sloane. Sloane had a cousin, Tara, who worked in real estate. She was always bragging about Tara's big closings, how Tara really knew how to move properties. It hit me with the force of a physical blow. The flowers were not an apology. They were a prop. The visit was a performance. The hug at the door, the promise to clean the garage, the photos of the walls, it was all a distraction. He had blocked the camera, not to hide his actions, but because his actions were inside. He came to my home, my sanctuary, and while he was distracting me with store-bought cake and fake hugs, he was executing the final steps of a theft. He was not just taking pictures of paint. He was confirming the layout for a sale. He was checking for any mail that might interfere. The signature on that clipboard was the template. The flowers were the cover. And the son I loved was the architect. Grief is a fog. But this new feeling was a cold, sharp blade. It cut through my inertia. At 9 a.m. Friday, the day of the supposed closing, I was not at Harbour and Bell Title. I was in the downtown offices of Law and Hearth LLP, sitting across from a woman named Marla Keene. Marla was in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a total absence of clutter on her desk. She was a specialist in real estate fraud and signature forgery. I had placed the printed-out sales contract between us. She finished reading it, took off her glasses, and folded her hands. "Evelyn, this is a classic deed fraud," she said, her voice devoid of pity, which I appreciated. "It's a seller impersonation scheme. They are not trying to get a loan in your name. They are trying to steal the house itself and sell it right out from under you. The closing tomorrow is the final step." "So we can stop it?" I asked, my voice thin. "We have to," Marla said, leaning forward. Time is critical. First, we file for an emergency temporary restraining order, a TRO, that will freeze the closing. Second, I will immediately file a lis pendens with the county recorder's office. That's suit pending in Latin. It puts a public, legal cloud on your property title, making it impossible for anyone to sell it, buy it, or get a loan against it until this is resolved. She slid a notepad toward her. I need evidence. Your real signatures, driver's license, passport, old bank statements, anything. I pushed my passport and license across the desk. I also have my work records. I was at the clinic all day on Tuesday, the day this was supposedly signed. Marla nodded. Good. Proof of non-presence. She flipped to the last page of the contract. Ah, here's the problem. She pointed to a stamp. Pinebridge Notary Services. The document includes a notarized certification stating that Evelyn Barlow appeared in person, presented valid ID, and signed the document in the notary's presence. But I did not, I said, my voice rising. I was at work. I have never heard of Pinebridge. I am sure you have not, Marla said grimly. A notary seal is the key to this kind of fraud. It gives the document a veneer of legitimacy. We have two possibilities. One, the notary is complicit, part of their crew. Two, they were fooled. It's called identity spoofing. Someone who looked vaguely like you on a grainy video call, holding a fake ID with your name and her picture. She tapped the paper. My bet is on option one. They know each other. Marla's focus was electrifying. She was building a wall as I was watching. Here is the plan, she said. I go to the courthouse now and file the TRO and lis pendens. While I'm there, you are going to go to the post office and put an immediate hold on all your mail. No new checks, no bank statements, no documents can be intercepted. Then, you will sign a limited power of attorney, authorizing me, and only me, to act on your behalf in this matter. Not your son. She met my eyes, and I knew she understood. There's one more thing, she said, a new, harder edge to her voice. We have them on the hook. They think this is happening. Let's not tell them we know. Let's make them show up. She swiveled her laptop around. We are going to send an email to Harbour and Bell Title, and we will copy the realtor. We will confirm your attendance at the closing. But we will add one thing. She drafted an email from my account. It was polite, professional, and chilling. Looking forward to closing this transaction. To ensure a smooth process, I will be bringing all original forms of identification, and I require that all parties, including the buyer's representatives and the notary, be present with all original paperwork for final verification. You are not asking for copies, I observed. Never, Marla said. We want them all in one room, holding their fraudulent documents in their hands. We want to see who shows up to claim this house. I left her office and did exactly as she said. I went to the post office. I signed the power of attorney. And when I got home, I opened a new, blank notebook. At the top of the first page, I wrote the date and time. I wrote down Marla's name. Then I wrote down Dylan's. I detailed every call, every text, every lie. The fear was still there, but it was no longer in charge. It was being logged, documented, and turned into fuel. The list of evidence was growing by the hour. I called Dylan on Friday afternoon. I kept my voice perfectly level, almost warm. Dylan, I've been thinking about your visit. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight? We can talk about all the help you've been offering. He hesitated, Dinner tonight? Yeah. Mum? Sure. What time? 7, I said, and hung up. I spent the afternoon preparing. I made the pasta bake he used to love when he was in college. I set the dining room table for 2, and in the center, exactly where his plate would be, I placed the vase. The lilies were grotesque now, the white petals limp and edged in a sickly, dark brown. The water was cloudy. He arrived at 7:10, holding his phone, already looking agitated. Hey, Mum. Smells good. Look, I can't stay long. Sloane is... Sit down. Dylan? I said, not unkindly. The food is ready. He sat, his eyes immediately flicking to the decaying flowers. He looked away. Mum, you should throw those out. They're dead. Not yet, I said, placing a plate in front of him. They're just browning. We ate in silence for a few minutes. He shoveled food into his mouth, not tasting it. So, he began, pushing pasta around his plate. I am glad you called. I was going to talk to you about this on Sunday anyway. I have been looking at some really nice condos downtown, close to us. Secure buildings, no yard work. Just a simple move. I'd handle everything. You know, to help you downsize. Take the burden off. I put my fork down. The click of metal on china was the loudest sound in the room. The burden, I repeated. My home. Yeah, Mum. It's a lot for you. I just want to help you be lighter. Move on. I reached for the folder I had placed on the sideboard. I slid it across the table. It stopped just short of the flowers. Is this how you're helping me, Dylan? He opened it. His face, which had been set in a mask of false concern, went slack. He was looking at the printed copy of the sales contract. Where did you get this? He whispered, his eyes darting to the front door. That doesn't matter, I said. My voice was no longer my own. It was cold, clear, and sharp. I have one question. The signature. It's very good. Who taught you how to practice it? What, Mom? I don't know what you're talking about. He tried to sound outraged, but it came out as a squeak. This is the broker, the real estate agent. They handle all the paperwork. This is just how it's done. How what is done? Dylan, how is it done? The sale, Mum. I'm trying to get you a great price. Tara handled everything. Tara Bloom, Sloane's cousin at Blue Acre Realty. The name hung in the air between us, as rotten as the smell of the lilies. I see, I said. I folded my hands on the table. Dylan, I have hired a lawyer. Her name is Marla Keene. She is filing a temporary restraining order and a lis pendens as we speak. She has advised me that the next legal step is to subpoena everyone involved. That includes you. So I am offering you this one. Last chance. As your mother. Tell me the truth. Right now. Before you are forced to tell it under oath. The colour drained from his face. He looked at the contract, at the flowers, at me. He was trapped. His phone vibrated on the table, a long, angry buzz. He grabbed it, his eyes wide with panic. He mashed the decline button and stood up so fast his chair screeched against the floor. I have to go. You are not going anywhere, I said, my voice rising for the first time. Sit down. The phone buzzed again, insistently. He fumbled it, and instead of declining, he answered, putting it to his ear. Stop! He hissed into the receiver. Stop Texting. She's here. She knows. She knows everything. He was talking to Sloane, or Janelle, or Tara. It did not matter. They were a hydra. One body. Many heads. He hung up, breathing hard. I had already pulled my own phone from my pocket. I set it on the table and pressed the screen. The small red light of the voice recorder app glowed. "Sit down, Dylan," I commanded. He did, his legs folding under him. "This document," I said, tapping the paper, "was notarized on Tuesday at 2:17 in the afternoon. Where were you?" "Dylan. Where were you at 2:17 p.m. on Tuesday?" He just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing. No words came out. He was completely, utterly silent. My phone, the one on the table recording his silence, suddenly lit up. A new text message. Not to his phone. To mine. I did not need to look. He read it aloud, his voice cracking. It's from Sloane. It says, "Stop this. Evelyn. Everything is arranged and stable." I looked at my son, the shell of the boy I had raised. I picked up my phone, my fingers steady. I typed my reply to his wife. "Stable for whom? Dylan left my house, stumbling like a drunk man, though he'd had nothing to drink. My recording of his silence was saved. I emailed it to Marla. The weekend was a blur of taut silence. I did not leave the house. I just sat, listening to the old clock's tick, waiting for the next move. It came on Monday morning, not as a text, but as a phone call from Marla. Her voice was pure steel. "Evelyn, the TRO is in place. The lis pendens is filed. The house is locked down. Now, let's talk about who we're fighting." "You mean Piermont Family Holdings, LLC?" I said, reading the name from the contract. "That's just a shell," Marla said, and I heard her typing. "A brand new LLC, registered just 6 months ago. Guess who the registered agent is?" I waited. Janelle Pierce, Sloane's mother. The name hit me. Janelle. A woman who dressed exclusively in sharp, expensive blazers and looked at everyone as if they were a poor investment. It gets better. Marla continued, her voice tightening. "Janelle Pierce has a history. I did a deep dive. She was the subject of a civil suit 3 years ago in Ohio. Predatory asset investment was the term. It involved advising elderly clients to liquidate their properties into a fund she managed. It was settled quietly, out of court. A network, a web, was materializing around me. "What about the notary?" I asked, feeling cold. "Pinebridge Notary Services. The notary's name is Brenda Swain. I ran her name against Tara Bloom's Sloane's cousin at Blue Acre. They were in the same sorority at State College. They are all over each other's social media. This is not a coincidence. Evelyn, this is a family and friends operation." The pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture far uglier than I could have imagined. "Marla, the contract said I'd received a 10% cash deposit. I never got a dime." "You weren't supposed to," Marla said. "I subpoenaed the initial wire transfer records from Harbour and Bell Title. The deposit didn't come from Piermont Holdings. It came from a joint checking account belonging to Dylan Barlow and Sloane Pierce. They paid the deposit to themselves, or rather, to Sloane's mother's shell company, just to make the transaction look legitimate on paper. They had used their own money to create the illusion of a sale, to grease the wheels of the theft." "There's more," Marla said, and her voice dropped. "The emergency subpoena for Blue Acre's internal emails just came through. Tara Bloom to Janelle Pierce, 3 weeks ago. I'm reading it now. He's getting the final samples. He says she's emotional, but will sign anything he puts in front of her. We're clear for the Tuesday signing. The seller will appear. For the notary, we have the signature model. We have the signature model. I was not a person. I was a signature model. I was an obstacle to be managed. Evelyn, listen to me, Marla said, pulling me from my rage. The TRO is temporary. They are going to fight it. They will say you have seller's remorse. They will produce the notarized document and say you are unstable. If that closing had gone through, if that deed had been recorded, getting your house back would have been a long, expensive, and uncertain war. We are still in a very dangerous position. So, what do we do? I asked. They don't know the full extent of what we know. They just know the closing was stopped. They are scheduled for a new mediation at the title office tomorrow at 10 a.m. They think they are coming to meet with lawyers to push this through. They think they are coming to pressure you into compliance. A silence stretched. You want to go, I said. It wasn't a question. I want us to go, Marla corrected. I want us to walk into that office at 10 a.m. with the TRO in my hand and your driver's license in yours. They are expecting a fight with a confused old woman. They are not expecting you. The plan was audacious. It was terrifying. And it felt, in that moment, like the only way out. To walk into the room where they were meant to finalize the theft of my life, and to reclaim it. I spent the entire night in front of the mirror, not practicing what I would say, but practicing how I would stand. I held Tom's old, heavy fountain pen in my hand, the one he used to sign our mortgage. I practiced my breathing. I practiced existing. I looked at my reflection. I was 58 years old. My name was Evelyn Barlow. My name is Evelyn Barlow, I said to the empty room, my voice shaking. I said it again, and again, until the shaking stopped. My name is Evelyn Barlow. The only person authorized to sign that name is me. The offices of Harbour and Bell Title were on the 7th floor of a glass building downtown. The lobby was all beige marble, brushed steel, and uncomfortable leather chairs. It smelled faintly of industrial carpet cleaner and weak coffee. Marla had told me to arrive at 9:50 in the morning. I was there at 9:45. Marla walked in at 9:50 exactly, followed by a large man in a suit who looked profoundly bored. Evelyn, this is Mr. Harris, she said, nodding to the man. He's our process server. He'll just be observing. We sat. We did not speak. At 10:05, the elevator doors opened. Tara Bloom, Sloane's cousin, walked out. She was wearing a bright red suit and talking loudly into her phone. Behind her was Janelle Pierce, looking cool and composed in a navy blazer, carrying a slim leather briefcase. And between them was a third woman. She was smaller than me, wearing a wide-brimmed hat pulled down low and a blue surgical mask, despite it being well past the season for them. She clutched a large, oversized handbag. She looked at no one, her head down. That's our seller, Marla murmured, her voice flat. A title agent, a young woman with a strained smile and a name tag that read, Sandra, came out to greet them. Ms. Pierce, Ms. Bloom, we have conference room B. And Evelyn Barlow, Tara said, gesturing to the woman in the hat. Wonderful, Sandra said. If I can just get everyone's identification, we can get started with the final verification. Janelle and Tara handed over their driver's licenses. Sandra smiled at the woman in the hat. And Ms. Barlow, your ID. The woman fumbled with her handbag. her hands shaking slightly. She pulled out a laminated card and passed it to Sandra. Sandra looked at it. She frowned. She held it up to the light. "Ma'am, this is... It's very blurry, and the corner is damaged. Do you have another form of ID, a passport?" The woman in the hat shook her head, muttering something through the mask. "I am afraid I can't accept this," Sandra said, her voice becoming firm. "It's her. Just run it." Tara snapped. "We're all here. We're ready to close." "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the lobby. All four of them turned. Tara's face went white. Janelle's eyes narrowed to slits. The woman in the hat took an involuntary step backward. I stood up and walked to the desk. Marla and Mr. Harris stood with me. "Sandra, is it?" I asked. The young woman nodded, wide-eyed. "My name is Evelyn Barlow," I said. I opened my purse and took out my passport and my driver's license. I placed them on the marble counter. The photos were clear. The holograms were intact. "This is my identification." Sandra looked at my IDs. She looked at the woman in the hat. She looked at Janelle. She looked at me. I don't understand." "You don't have to," Marla said. She stepped forward and handed Sandra a thick, stapled document. "This is a temporary restraining order, signed by Judge Alani this morning. It states that all transactions related to the property at 418 Arbor Lane are immediately frozen, pending a hearing on deed fraud and seller impersonation." Mr. Harris, the process server, stepped past Marla and handed identical documents to a stunned Tara and a stone-faced Janelle. The reaction was immediate. "This is insane!" Tara shrieked, looking at Janelle. "You said this was handled. You said it was clean." "It is handled," Janelle said, her voice dropping to a low hiss. "This is just a procedural issue, a last-minute emotional outburst." She looked at me, her eyes full of contempt. "This is simply an investment strategy. Evelyn, you're confused." "I am not confused. Janelle," I said. Just then, the elevator doors opened again. Dylan tumbled out, his hair a mess, his shirt untucked. He saw the group. My face. Marla. The papers in Tara's hand. His face, already pale, turned the color of ash. "Mom, what's going on? I just came to..." "You're late," I said. "What is all this?" A new, sharp voice cut in. A man in a better suit had emerged from a back office, clearly the manager. Sandra was at his side, speaking rapidly. He looked at the TRO in Marla's hand. He looked at me. He looked at the trembling, masked woman. "Sandra," the manager said, "call the police, right now." He turned to Janelle. "I don't know what this is, but I know a court order. This closing is dead." He looked at Sandra again. "And get me the security footage from the notary's office for last Tuesday. I want to see the video record of that signing." A new voice, a secretary from a back office, chimed in. "Oh, Mr. Ames, we don't need the video. I pulled the lobby camera like you asked. From yesterday, when Ms. Pierce stopped by." She handed him a tablet. The manager looked at it. His face hardened. "This is you, Ms. Pierce," he said. "At 4:30 p.m. yesterday, in this lobby, handing our notary, Ms. Swain, a sealed white envelope." Janelle said nothing. Tara looked like she was going to be sick. As the manager turned his back to dial the police, my eyes drifted past the commotion. On the reception desk, there was a tall vase of flowers. white lilies, exactly like the ones Dylan brought. They were starting to wilt, dropping their yellow pollen on the clean marble. I watched as a janitor, pushing a trash can, stopped, pulled the entire vase out, and dumped the flowers, water and all, into the black plastic bag. He wiped the counter clean and moved on. The police were professional, but this was not their arena. The initial questioning happened right there, in the chaos of the Harbour and Bell lobby. The notary, Brenda Swain, was already crying, claiming she had performed a remote video verification. She said the woman in the hat, who turned out to be a struggling actress Janelle knew, had shown her scanned documents over a video call. It was a thin, pathetic excuse, and it fell apart in seconds. Marla did not wait for the police. She presented her own evidence to the title manager and the attending officer, her voice a cold, factual monotone. Ms. Barlow was at her desk at the North Star Community Clinic during the entire window of the alleged signing. Here are her time-stamped work emails. Here is the cell tower data placing her phone's location 5 miles away. And here is the data from her doorbell camera, which shows no one, including Ms. Swain, approached her home that day. Dylan, who had been frozen by the elevator, finally crumpled. He leaned against the wall, his hands covering his face. I thought it was legal, he choked out, his voice a child's wail. I thought it was just formalizing. Sloane and Janelle, they said it was safe. They said it was just a way to secure the asset for everyone. The words hit me. Secure the asset, not my home. I did not yell. The rage was too deep for that. I walked over to him, stood in front of my son. It was never about safety, Dylan. It was about money. I waited until he lowered his hands and looked at me, his eyes red and terrified. I have one question for you. Who did you believe them, or everything you know about me? He had no answer. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text message from Sloane. My mother's lawyers will be handling this. You are making a terrible mistake. I showed the screen to Marla. She nodded grimly, forwarding a screenshot to her own device. Thank you, Sloane, she murmured. We will add witness intimidation and coercive control to the civil complaint. The title manager, in full-blown panic, announced the file was closed, the transaction was void, and a full report was being sent to the State Department of Justice and the Notary Commission. In the elevator ride down, Marla was already planning the next phase. The criminal case is theirs, she said, nodding back toward the police. Our case is civil. We file immediately. We sue for damages, all legal fees, and we demand a public retraction from Janelle Pierce and Tara Bloom. I want something else, I said. As the doors opened to the street, Marla looked at me. A personal condition. For Dylan, a legally binding agreement on his boundaries. He will have no power of attorney, no access to my accounts, no right to represent me in any financial matter. Ever again. Marla raised an eyebrow. That's a hard line. I am not negotiating on the behavior, I said. But it is the only door I can leave open for actual amends. He must sign it. The days that followed were a new, hollow kind of quiet. But the town was not quiet. The rumour mill in our small suburban community went into overdrive, churning out variations of the story. I heard it second-hand from a colleague at the clinic, that elder asset gang. The story had taken on a life of its own, and for once, the gossip was mostly correct. The facts, as Marla reported them, were sharp. Blue Acre Realty, in a desperate attempt to distance itself, had publicly suspended Tara Bloom. Her license was under review. The notary, Brenda Swain, was facing a formal state investigation and the revocation of her commission. And Janelle, predictably, hired a public relations firm. A statement was released, clarifying the profound misunderstanding and blaming procedural errors by the title company. She was painting herself as the victim of incompetence. Then, a different kind of message, a handwritten letter, shoved under my mail slot, not delivered by the postman. Dylan's familiar, messy script. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time before opening it. It was not an apology. It was a confession. Mum, I was scared. Scared of being poor. Scared of failing Sloan. I saw the money in the house, and I took the worst shortcut. I know. I took the worst one. He was scared of being poor, not scared of doing wrong. He confessed his weakness, not his betrayal. I took his letter, folded it, and put it in the file for Marla. Then I wrote my own statement, not for him, but for the court. It was short. My home is not a financial solution for anyone. It is not an asset to be leveraged. It is not a shortcut. It is my home. I emailed it to Marla. After that, I did something for myself. I took a pad of small yellow sticky notes. I walked through every room, the house that was still, blessedly, mine, in the kitchen, by the phone, in my bedroom, on the mirror, on the back of the front door. I wrote the same 4 words on each not authorized for sale. I signed it E.B. It was a promise to Tom, a promise to myself. Marla called 2 days before the preliminary hearing. Her voice was electric. We have it? Evelyn? The big one? What is it? We subpoenaed Tara's phone records, the audio, a call she made to Dylan the week before the flowers. I heard a click, and then an audio file played. Tara's voice, slick and impatient. Just get the sample. Dylan. What's the worst that happens? She's not going to do anything. She'll cry. Maybe. Your mom will never dare to fight this. Won't dare. The words hung in my quiet kitchen. Never dare. They had mistaken my love for weakness. They had mistaken my grief for incompetence. They had mistaken me. I hung up. I went to Tom's desk, a piece of furniture I rarely opened. I opened the top drawer. Beneath old receipts and paperclips, I found it. His old, heavy, black fountain pen. The one he used to sign our marriage certificate. The one he used to sign the original deed. It was the only one I wanted. The only one that would ever represent my signature again. I put it in my coat pocket, where it would stay until the hearing. Then, I made one last call. He answered on the first ring, his voice small, as if he lived by the phone. Hello. I have the recording. Dylan, I said. My voice was flat. The one where Tara tells you I wouldn't dare. Silence. Just his breathing. The hearing is Wednesday, 10 a.m. If you want to tell the truth, if you want to begin to fix this, you will come, you will stand up, and you will say it under your own name. Not with flowers, not with letters, with your own voice. I did not wait for an answer. I hung up. The night before the hearing, the world went still. The sky was a flat, bruised grey, holding its breath. The storm was coming. I sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, drinking peppermint tea, even though it was cold. The air was heavy. By the front door, where I had hung it as a reminder, was the shriveled, dry bunch of lilies. They were brown and brittle, a grotesque skeleton. They were no longer a threat or an apology or a prop. They were just evidence, a silent, ugly fact. The courtroom was not grand. It was small, with wood-panelled walls and fluorescent lighting that buzzed. But it felt more real, more solid, than any room I had ever been in. Marla stood before the judge, a small, no-nonsense woman who looked like she had seen everything. Marla did not raise her voice. She did not use emotional language. She built a case, brick by brick. We have a timeline of emails, Your Honor, showing a coordinated effort to defraud. We have security camera footage from the North Star Community Clinic, showing Ms. Barlow at her desk at the exact time of the alleged signing. She placed a magnified image on the projector. It was my signature from the contract, next to my signature from my passport. And here, we have the signature itself, a meticulous forgery. But the perpetrator over-practiced one unique element, the drag on the final I. They made it too perfect, too deliberate. Unlike the natural, reflexive motion of Ms. Barlow's hand. A prosecutor from the district attorney's office, attending for the parallel criminal case, spoke briefly. He noted the formal investigation into the notary, Brenda Swain, for conspiracy to commit fraud and fraudulent notarization. The judge looked over her glasses at Janelle, Tara, and their lawyer. She did not look pleased. I am granting the preliminary injunction to remain in place indefinitely. This court recognizes a high probability of fraud. The property's current status is to be preserved, untouched, until a final trial date is set. And then, a movement. Dylan, sitting in the back row, stood up. His own lawyer, a young man I did not recognize, tried to pull him down. But Dylan walked to the front, his hands shaking. He looked at me. His face was a ruin. "I did it," he said, his voice cracking, but loud enough for the whole court to hear. I got the signature samples. I gave them the authorization form. I took the pictures of the utility bills. I told them she trusted me. He was not looking at me anymore, but at the judge. I let them in. Janelle and Tara. They told me it was just a way to manage her assets. I let them do it. Janelle Pierce shot to her feet. "He is lying. This is a family dispute. He's unstable, trying to deflect his own failures." "Is that so, Ms. Pierce?" Marla asked, her voice quiet. She nodded to the clerk. The large screen on the wall, which had shown my signature, flickered. It now showed the lobby of Harbour and Bell title. It was silent footage, time-stamped from the day before the closing. And there was Janelle, in her sharp blazer, standing at the reception desk. We watched her hand a thick white envelope to Brenda Swain, the notary. We watched the notary slip it under her desk without opening it. The courtroom was absolutely, completely silent. Janelle sat down. She did not speak again. The judge's rulings came swiftly after that. The sales transaction was declared void. A permanent fraud alert was to be filed with the county recorder, tied to the property's deed. Janelle Pierce, Tara Bloom, and Blue Acre Realty were legally barred from marketing, accessing, or making any inquiries about the property. The civil court, the judge noted, would hear our request for damages, legal fees, and the personal restraining order. It was over. Almost. The judge looked at me. "Ms. Barlow, do you have anything you wish to say?" I stood. I could feel Tom's heavy pen in my pocket. I did not need to hold it. I looked at the judge, at Janelle, and then at Dylan. "My name is Evelyn Barlow," I said, my voice clear and steady. "Only I sign that name. From now on, no one borrows my hand again." In the hallway, the noise of the world rushed back. Marla was already talking to the DA. Janelle and Tara were swept away by their lawyers, a flurry of black coats and angry whispers. Dylan stood alone, by the elevator. He waited for me. "Mom?" he whispered as I approached. The word was a question, a plea. "Mom, I am so sorry." There were no flowers. There were no props, just his raw, terrified words. I stopped, but I did not move closer. "Amends are a long road, Dylan," I said. "It's a long, hard road, and it starts by you never, ever, touching my home again." That evening, I returned to my house. It was quiet. It was safe. It was mine. I had a new, high-security deadbolt installed. I took Tom's fountain pen from my pocket. I did not put it back in the drawer. I hung it on a small nail, right by the new lock, a reminder of what was real. I sat on my porch, the air cool and clean. I took a small piece of paper from my notebook and wrote on it. I placed it on the small table by my chair, weighting it down with my teacup. This signature is mine, and so is this life. Thank you for listening to my story. Please comment below and tell me where you're listening from. I'd love to connect and hear what you think. Please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, like the video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.